Hey guys, this is heyybritny and welcome back to my channel. In today's episode, we are going to be doing pop culture. And I want to talk about the interview that David Justice did with Matt Barnes. And in that interview, he talked about his playing career and also his relationship specifically with Halle Berry. So I really want to dig into Halle Berry if you don't know who she is. She is a famous actress. She was pretty much famous in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. She has been in a bunch of popular black movies, Strictly Business, Jungle Fever, Losing Isaiah, Baps, and additionally, she was a beauty queen. Now, David Justice was a baseball player, and he was Rookie of the Year in 1990. He's a three-time All-Star, and he played in the MLB for 14 years. So let's go ahead and listen to some of his interview.
But I didn't really have any really real personal stuff until, Halle and I got together. You see, and of course that was a lot of focus because back in them times, I can't think other than Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe. I can't think of anybody before that was us.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. I can't think of no one. Mm-hmm. And then Halle coming up young and being hot and just trying to make her career, and then you got me. It really wasn't a lot of negative attention until I decided to leave her. In 1996. I remember Halle saying to me, hey, she asked me to marry her after knowing me for 5 months. I said, okay, but because I couldn't say no.
I mean, yeah, who's going to say no at that time?
And I said, okay, but I don't know if my heart was really into it.
Right.
But I didn't want to make her feel bad and say no, or like I was just in the moment. It caught me off guard. But I was like, cool, we getting along, we vibing. We're only 5 months in, we still in the honeymoon state. But we spent a lot of time apart because she was doing movies in this country, that country. And we honestly, we probably could have made it if I knew about therapy. If we knew about therapy, we probably could have made it because we never had any major issues like that. It's just that because I was young and had only been in, honestly, one real relationship before her, my knowledge and my understanding, my wisdom around relationships just wasn't vast. So I'm looking at my mom, and I'm a Midwest guy, so in my mind, I'm thinking a wife at that time should cook, clean.
Traditional.
And then I'm thinking, okay, if we have kids, is this the woman I want to have kids with and build a family with? And at that time, as a young guy, she don't cook, don't clean, don't really seem like motherly. And then we start having issues. Listen, we never, I'll say this. We never had any issues about other women, other men. I mean, like, I was never tripping I was tripping one time when she...
Hold on, I got one time I was tripping.
At one time, because I didn't understand it. When we were out to lunch in L.A., and I remember I'm from Cincinnati, man. I ain't even in the L.A. scene like that. And she see an actor that she worked with one time, and he came in, hey, kissed him on the lips.
Oh.
What are we doing around here?
Was he European or American? I'm confused.
American.
What the fuck is going on
here? Oh, so I know this is going to be a conversation. So get home and I ask about that. Oh, that's what we do in L.A. Oh, okay then. So now her manager and I used to go to this restaurant all the time. I had a young lady at the front seat us all the time. We went there so much, she became so friendly. We got the hugging her every time we come in. Hey, how you doing? Just regular hug. Take Halle and his wife to lunch one time. I said, Halle, this is such and such. This is Halle, right? Halle looked at that girl, saw how fine she was. Man, she gave her one of them, like barely touched her hand, right? Just played her crazy. I was embarrassed, bro. I was like, but wait, hold on. I just hugged the girl.
Right.
You kissed this dude, and you mad at me because I hugged the girl? So remember, we young. So young, you get petty.
Yeah.
You understand? You petty when you're young. There's things you just do that are petty when you're young. Well, anyway, the honeymoon stage was over, right? And now it's just David and Halle. And when it's just David and Halle, I just realized this is not the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. So February 1996, I told her, hey, I can't do this no more. We don't have any kids. You said you wouldn't want any money from me because really she didn't have any money. I was the one who bought the house in LA. I was the one who had my house in Atlanta. I'm really putting everything. And I said, you said you didn't want any money, so we don't have any kids. We should just make a clean break. And she was like, no. No. And then all of a sudden I find out I got all these women. I find out I'm doing all this other stuff. And so what she was doing is, see, I'm just an athlete. I don't have managers. I don't have this system behind me. You see, she got managers. She got all this kind of stuff.
She got the machine.
She got the machine. So you got the machine now coming against me. And I remember my mom saying to me, she was like, listen, baby, all the media want to do is see you two, you young black kids fighting with each other. She said, you just take the high road and let her say whatever she want to say, but I don't want you out here talking bad about that girl. My mama said this to me. I'm an only child, raised with just my mom. What my mom said was gospel.
Right.
So I said, okay, Mom, I won't salt her like that in public. I might talk a lot of junk to the boys, but I ain't gonna say nothing in public. And I didn't, man. I didn't. I just watched her say all this stuff about me, and I was like, and so crazy is the one thing that probably I would say hurt the most is Halle had a relationship with a gentleman who hit her on the side of the head, and so she lost some hearing, but she never made him public. And I'm not gonna make him public because I ain't gonna do him like that. I know who it is. But for people to think, oh, it had to be David Justice because the only person they associated her with was me. Now she said it was a former boyfriend. I'm not a former boyfriend. I was her husband.
Right.
That's different.
Big difference.
But literally from 96 until even today, sometimes I'll see something on social media. Well, he hit her in the head. That's just a quick Google search.
Yeah.
Do a quick Google search. That girl ain't never said I hit her in the head. But one thing I didn't like is, but she let you think that.
Right.
She let the world think it.
That's tough.
She didn't come out and say, oh, no, it wasn't David. But I'm not going to say who it was, but it wasn't him. No, she let the world think that it was me. And that I never appreciated with her. I thought she was dead wrong for that. I thought she should have handled that better. And I always said like this, man, if I was so bad, you would think she would keep my name out of her mouth. She would be so happy I left, right? If I was so bad as a husband, she'd be like, whoa, I'm so glad he left me, boy. Because it ain't like it was hard for her to find a next dude, right? She kept my name in her mouth because she wanted to be with me. She wanted us to work out. You know what I mean? And I know now that I've gotten a lot older and I look back, I mean, it's been a long time since I look back on that situation, but when I probably got probably like in my 30s, and I was more mature, and I look back on that situation, and I'm like, that girl really, really did love me, and I can see why she would be so mad at me. Because imagine if you really love somebody and they tell you they want to break up and there ain't nothing you can say to get them back. That's had to be tough on her. I just wasn't emotionally mature at that age to really truly understand the magnitude of how she was really feeling. And I would have did things different back then too. I wouldn't have just, literally when I left her, I didn't even talk to her no more. Like, I didn't even ease out. Hey, I don't want to be together no more. Gone. You see? I mean, I could have massaged that better, Matt. I could have. So.
All right, so we watched quite a bit of that video, and there's definitely some things that I want to talk about. So at the very beginning, he said that he didn't really know of another kind of like popular couple, like a popular Black couple, besides him and Halle Berry. However, we had Whitney and Bobby, and we also had Lisa Lopez from TLC and that football player, Andre Riessen, if I'm saying his last name correctly. But so we did have other famous Black couples that would have been dating or involved around the same time. So I want to clarify that I don't think he was just talking about popular Black couples. I think he was talking about athletes and other famous people. And the only other example I can think of is Mariah Carey and Derek Jeter. But I know that David and Halle Berry were a popular couple. I actually didn't know who David Justice was, like, independently. I only knew him as Halle Berry's husband, which speaks to, I guess, the star power that Halle Berry has for me to know her more. But also, too, I don't really watch baseball, but I've seen a lot of the movies that she's been in, just because those are classic Black movies, so you would have had more exposure to someone who is doing movies and TV shows versus someone who's playing baseball if you don't watch baseball. So that makes sense to me. There may be people who know David Justice, but they don't really know Halle Berry, and that's totally fine. What I noticed was that when he was talking about how they got together, he was basically describing their relationship as not being like exclusive or serious, because he was talking about how he had women, she had other men, and all of that stuff, and then he kind of made it seem like she was more into him than he was into her. I looked at Wikipedia and I saw that basically it said that she saw him in this MTV celebrity baseball game, and then she wanted him, basically found out through a local reporter that he was a fan of hers, gave her number to the reporter to give to him, and then obviously he would have called her, contacted her because of that. And so in that sense, he initiated this relationship. He was into her. He did not have to call her. He could have rejected her, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know back then how easy it is to find out stuff about everybody without the internet being what it was. So I don't know if he could have asked people like, hey, you know, what's Halle Berry like off camera when she's just a normal person and all of that stuff. So I don't know if he should have made an effort to find out more about her, because he did talk about how they weren't really spending a whole lot of time together because he would have been traveling for baseball and all of that stuff, and then she would have been busy because she was acting. However, I do like the idea of women pursuing men, or at least knowing who they want and going after it. And if it doesn't work out, that's totally fine. I do have mixed feelings, though, about a woman proposing to a man. I feel like that should be something that a man does with women. I know that there was one famous couple where the woman proposed to the man and then he ended up proposing to her. And I can't think of who I'm talking about right now, but basically he did that because he wanted to make things right, because he knew that traditionally men are supposed to propose to women. And what I found a little bit problematic was that he's basically said that he didn't want to say no and hurt her feelings, so you committed to marriage and being involved with this woman in a more serious capacity because you didn't want to hurt her feelings. And then basically, I don't want to say that you guys wasted each other's time, but the relationship didn't pan out the way that it should have if you are serious about marrying someone. And so I think that he probably should have told her like, hey, no, let's not get married, let's continue to date and get to know each other better and all of that stuff. I feel like most guys should know whether or not they want to marry a woman within 6 months of dating her. Like, you had time to figure out if she was the type of woman that you wanted to be married to, and if you weren't seeing that in the first 6 months, then you should have wanted to wait longer. You shouldn't have rushed into marriage. I don't know if ego is at play here, because obviously he's David Justice, he's a baseball player, he's feeling himself and all of that. This is Halle Berry, she's a beauty queen, she's attractive, and she wants you, whatever. I don't know if it was the ego of getting a woman like Halle Berry and having her on your arm and all of that stuff. And so if he was this Midwestern guy, they're typically more traditional, I feel like he would have kind of went about things a little bit differently just from that aspect. Because if you are a traditional guy, you know right away whether a woman's gonna fit your lifestyle or the life that you want to live, and if she's not, then you cut her loose, you move on, and you find somebody else. And so I don't know what it was that made him, I guess, compromise his values in a sense and continue this relationship with Halle Berry and then marry her and all of this stuff. And the other thing that I think was kind of a little bit shady here was that he talked about how she asked him to marry her after 5 months. So he was basically insinuating like, hey, you know, this is not enough time, she's desperate to ask me this and all of this stuff. And then we know how he feels about it, but he just kind of put that out there to kind of make it seem like, hey, she's really forcing the issue, I'm feeling pressure, blah, 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 I don't want to hurt her feelings and all of that stuff. And so he obviously agreed to the marriage, so he's kind of at fault for that. He didn't have to say yes. But then the other thing that I found out that was super interesting was that they got married, I guess, after midnight, according to Wikipedia. This leads me to think that this was kind of like a Vegas wedding, because it just seemed kind of like they knew they wanted to get married, or at least because he had said yes or whatever, they got got married and it wasn't really planned in a sense, because I don't know if it would have been an official wedding ceremony where you have your family and friends there, you plan it out and all of that stuff, if you're getting married after midnight. I don't really think it's a bad thing if you get married to someone after midnight. I want to stress that if you know that that's the person for you, it doesn't matter if you get married in Vegas, if you have a real wedding, or if you have a courthouse wedding. What matters is that you guys are actually committed to this relationship. So yes, I made a point about saying the timing of when she married him, but I don't think it's that bad if you know that this is a person you want to spend your life with and both people are all in on that marriage and making it work. There was something interesting that David said in this interview, and he basically talked about how he felt like therapy would have saved the relationship if he knew about it. And I found this super interesting because I was reading a book called Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan, and basically it's this Black woman who's kind of going through this struggle, and she had a stillborn birth, and basically she was really depressed because of it. She went to therapy, her husband wouldn't, and then later on, like years later down the line, the kids started having issues, and the father, the husband, he was only willing to go to therapy because the kid was having issues. He wasn't willing to go to therapy when his wife was having issues. He didn't believe in it. And so I think that's the thing in the Black community, where people are against talking about your feelings and your thoughts and all of that stuff and what you're going through with someone else who's you're paying to be there to listen. And I actually think that therapy is a really good tool, and I think that more people should use it. Yes, it's expensive, but it's super helpful to be able to actually walk through your thoughts and what you're feeling, because that helps you learn something about yourself and your relationships that you have with other people, and also the relationship that you have with yourself. I think it is important that people know about therapy and they're open to doing it, because it really can change your life and also make your relationships better. The other thing that he brought up in this clip was that basically Halle Berry didn't cook, she didn't clean, and then she wasn't motherly. So I didn't like that he didn't go into like what made her not motherly. Like, did he see her with kids and she didn't handle it very well? Did she not take care of him? Was she not kind of, not necessarily babying him, but was she not acting like his mother? Was she not treating him like his mother would have? And so I wish that he would have explained that more, because if you're looking for a woman to act exactly like your mom, you may or you may not get that, but I don't think every woman should be required to treat you like your mother would in order for that relationship to be successful. So I would have liked it if he explained that a little bit more, so that we can kind of understand what exactly he was seeing and what he observed, because I know that she does have 2 kids now, and she had 2 kids later in life, and she did have kids with 2 separate men, which is whatever. But let me just find out when she had kids exactly. Okay, so I just looked it up, and Halle Berry had her first kid at 42. Now, that's definitely later than most people typically have kids, and I'm really surprised by that. I'm wondering what you guys think about this, especially with working women, because if you want to be successful at your career, some women are not willing to sacrifice any part of their career to deal with being pregnant or to experience being pregnant, and then also to mother and nurture and raise the kid once they give birth. And so for a lot of women, that either prevents them from getting ahead in their career, or they completely stop working because they realize, hey, you know, I want to be with my kid, I want to raise my kid, I don't really want to spend all my time working and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm interested in what you guys think about this. How do you think that women should balance having a career and having a family? Do you think that 42 is too old to be having kids? Do you think that it's God's timing and whenever you have kids is acceptable? What are your thoughts on this? Now, there was something that David mentioned during the interview, and basically he was talking about how there was this one time where he got upset about Halle's behavior with other men, and basically he talked about how they were out to dinner, I believe, and he said that Halle recognized some actor that she worked with, and then she ended up kissing him on the lips in front of David, and so they had a conversation about this, and she just said, oh, that's what we do in LA. And so I don't know what the actual conversation looks like, but I would imagine that he would have said, hey, you know, that's what they do in LA, that's not what we do in this marriage, in this relationship. You can't do that. These are my standards, these are my expectations. And so I don't know if he just accepted it when she said, hey, this is what we do in LA, because I would imagine that even though he was a famous baseball player, that's very different from being an actor in Hollywood. So I don't know if he felt like he had to sacrifice, I guess, some of his values because of who she was in the industry that she was involved in. That makes me think that there was sort of a power dynamic that was in her favor. But it's interesting because he talks about being the one with the money money. He talked about footing everything. He talked about how he was the one with 2 houses. And so I feel like there's a power dynamic here. It just kind of seemed like he wasn't leading the relationship as much as you would expect if he is just Midwestern traditional guy. Then he talked about this story where I guess he knew some hostess at a restaurant. He took that woman and Halle out to lunch or something like that. He was friends with the woman's husband as well, so it didn't seem like there was anything weird going on from how he shared this story. But he talked about Halle being jealous of how the woman looked and how she didn't really properly acknowledge her and all of this stuff. And so I wonder if there's more to the story, but I definitely agree that women can be threatened when they're boyfriends or husbands and all of that stuff are too friendly with other women. Even if that woman is married, there's still some boundaries that you shouldn't cross. Like, I know that there's a huge topic of whether or not if a guy is out with his wife and he sees his friend, should his friend acknowledge his wife? Should his friend hug his wife? How should they interact with his wife? There was a clip that went viral, and it was basically J. Cole zapping up Gabrielle Union, and people thought that this was funny or this was awkward and weird because he kind of greeted her like one of the homies instead of hugging her and showing her proper respect as a woman. There's this question of how you interact with people of the opposite sex when you're married. And so obviously I feel like this is kind of a weird dynamic. Why would you go out with 2 women? Like, the husband should be there. Halle has a reason in that sense to be upset or jealous if she thinks that her husband is being too friendly with another woman. We don't really know the full details on that, but I think that he shared this story to kind of show, like, you know, that Halle was insecure and all of this stuff. And I think she does. I think any normal woman would be insecure if they feel like a woman is too close to her husband and all of that stuff. So I think that's kind of normal behavior. I also wonder what expectations they set once they got married about interacting with the opposite sex. Now, one thing that David keeps saying throughout this interview is that he left Halle, and I know that Halle technically filed for divorce first, and then he filed 2 weeks later, so we don't really know what the conversation was like between them. He does tell us that he said, hey, you know, this isn't working, I want a divorce, we don't have kids, you said that you didn't want any money from me, blah, 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 and so he's wanting to end the relationship. He's wanting to cold turkey cut her. He said that once she asked for a divorce or whatever, he stopped speaking to her, and he wished that he had handle that differently. And so I think that it doesn't really matter who left who, but I know that in terms of the public appearance, you want to be the first person to file for divorce. And if this was a horrible relationship or whatever, you want to be the one who says, hey, you know, I recognize that something is wrong. I don't want to be with this person anymore. I was the one who called it quits. And so in that sense, yes, it's going to be, yes, it is relevant who wanted the divorce and then how it was handled afterwards. And he spent a lot of time talking about how he felt like Halle really loved him, and he realized this later on, that Halle really loved him, and also that she was struggling with the breakup because she really wanted to be with him. And then he talked about how if you want to be with someone and they want to break up, and then you realize that nothing you say is getting through to them and is making them want to still be with you and try to work things out. And I even read in Wikipedia that she did want to unalive herself because of this relationship falling out. And so I think that he should have known how Halle was feeling and how invested she was in this relationship. So I don't know why he has to realize later or years down the line that this is something that he could have handled better. Yes, you mature with age, but it seems like he didn't really appreciate Halle during the relationship because he should have been better in tune with her to know how she would react to this and all of this stuff and how invested she was in the relationship. I was a little confused by that, and I would have appreciated more information, but obviously they just spent like 10 to 11 minutes on this topic during this interview, but I thought that was an interesting point that he brought up. Now, in terms of the divorce, he talked about how she initially said that she didn't want any money, and then it turned, I guess, into some type of hostile divorce or whatever. He talked about how she was talking about him in the public. He was talking about domestic violence allegations, and he talked about how a former boyfriend hit her. She lost 80% of her hearing in 1 year, and he was upset that she didn't come out and say, hey, you know, it wasn't David, it was somebody else. We talk about believing women when they say that men have harmed them and all of this stuff, and we also talk about how this hurts men if allegations are false and stuff like that. So I can see where he's coming from with wanting somebody to correct the record, but I don't know if he himself came out and said that he wasn't the person who did it. He seemed like because he was telling a story about how his mother said, hey, don't say anything bad about her publicly. The media really wants to pit you two people against each other. Don't badmouth her, basically. And so I don't know if he felt like he couldn't say anything, and obviously he's saying a lot now, but I feel like he should have, at the very least, if this was something that was affecting you and bothering you, you should have either picked up the phone and called Halle and asked her to say something on your behalf, or you could have said something yourself, especially because in these times, with not having the internet the way we do now and not having social media the way that we do now, this would have really impacted you in a different way, because you couldn't have gotten your voice out there as much without doing a TV appearance, a magazine interview, and all of that stuff. And so I think it is important that he brings up this now, because you can see how he said that from like 1997 to now, 2025, people still think that he was the one who did it and he didn't. And so that is definitely damaging to someone's reputation and mental health, that they are a famous person, there's these rumors out there, and then no one's clearing it up or whatever. And so I can definitely understand his frustration with that, and I'll leave that there. And lastly, the other thing that he mentioned was that basically when he asked for a divorce, he just stopped talking to her. And I don't know what you guys think about people remaining friends after a breakup or after a divorce. I know that in some cases, divorces are really hostile and really negative, to where the two people really cannot have any type of relationship after the divorce, because it gets messy with trying to figure out assets and who gets what and who has to pay who and all of that stuff. And so if you have a relationship where you're getting a divorce and you guys are on friendly terms and want to be friends after the divorce goes through, then yes, I think it's totally fine to stay in touch. But I don't know if staying in touch would have helped in this case, especially with what I read about Halle wanting to unalive herself. I think that maybe staying in touch would have helped things a little bit, but I also think that that may have prolonged things and made it more difficult to move on, especially if he's just trying to pity her in that sense and he's not genuinely trying to maintain a relationship with her and all that stuff. And so I don't know, outside of what he said in this interview, I've heard bits and pieces over the years about their relationship and all of that, but I don't really know a whole lot about this situation. But I thought that they talked about some interesting things in the article, and I wanted to come on camera and bring those things up. And so this was a really interesting topic. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about traditional roles in a relationship. We talked about navigating relationships as celebrities, and when you're trying to have a career as a woman and trying to get married and have a family, how do you handle that, especially when you're at the beginning and reaching the peak of your career, because they were married from 1993 to 1997, I believe. Really, 2001 was like the peak of her career in a sense, because she won an Oscar for Monsters Ball. We know that she has 2 kids now, and we know that she moved on and all of that stuff. And so I'm just curious about how women really handle a career and having a family and kids, because it seems like some women can have it all, but most women don't. And so I'm super interested in this topic and this conversation that we've had today, because with Halle Berry specifically, people say that she and J-Lo are basically the same because they've had a bunch of failed relationships and all of that stuff. And so Halle Berry was with a few other people. She was with David Justice, of course, Eric Benet, and then also I think she and Michael Ealy were together for a little bit after they did Their Eyes Were Watching God. And I think she's been with a few other people since then. And so it just seems like it's difficult to be a successful woman and to have a successful relationship at the same time. And so I don't know if the problem is Halle Berry or if the problem is the men that she's picking and all of this stuff. So this was definitely a good interview to cover and talk about in a little bit more detail and depth, and just kind of really seeing how we feel about the different topics that came up. One thing I am interested about, how do you guys feel about people talking about past relationships when they've moved on and they're married to someone else? I know that some people were saying like, hey, this was a cringe interview to talk about Halle Berry. When you're married, you have kids and all of that stuff. And I think that if you are going to do an interview and you're going to talk about everything, you should be able to talk about the relationships that you've had in the past, especially if you were in the public eye when you were in those relationships and people know some details. You should use the interview to clear the air. I also think that you should do it in a respectful way to where you're not bashing women or bashing men. I just think it's very difficult to have interviews and talk about your past relationships, because when you're thinking about everything that happened, you kind of get in the moment, you get in the feelings that you're experiencing during that time, and that may come out in the interview, like your frustration or whatever. And so sometimes it can be a hit or miss when you talk about past relationships. especially if you're revealing negative stuff about people that they may not know. Because I don't know if a lot of people knew that this was the reason why he said that he left her, because she didn't cook, she didn't clean, and she wasn't motherly. For a lot of women, they may think that these are not the only things that matter in a relationship or show that someone can be a good wife. And so I just think there was probably not a good match in terms of what they valued and what they both brought to the table and how they expected a marriage to work. And so I think that if you are dating somebody and you are thinking about marriage, these are conversations that you should be having, because I know that some people are going to say, hey, 5 months is not enough time. Some people are going to say, hey, I met my husband and married him 2 weeks later and all of that stuff. So I don't think that timing matters as much as how much you know about that person and how much you guys are on the same page about what you want your relationship to look like. Alrighty, so we covered a lot in this interview. I know that I haven't done anything on pop culture recently, but I've been seeing some stuff on Twitter about this, and I know that this interview happened, I think, on August 7th. It's August 10th, and I'm just now doing a episode on it, but I think there's a lot of great topics here, and I hope that you guys leave your thoughts in the comment section below and let me know what you think about this interview and the topics that we covered today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.